Dr. Usama Hasan is a senior researcher at the counter-extremism think tank, the Quilliam Foundation, and he's also an imam in the Waltham Forest area of London, where this family are from. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I'll get your views on what Lord Carlisle said there in just a second, but first of all, what's your reaction to the news that a family from your borough appear to have gone to Syria?
Well, of course, it's very sad, worrying news, and I hope that they're not on the way to Syria and that they actually don't get in there. But if relatives are worried, then they presumably have strong grounds for saying that, and counter-terrorism police wouldn't have released a statement otherwise. So obviously I'm quite concerned, but to be honest, not particularly surprised. We have had families go from different parts of London before. We've had people with links to Walthamstow go before. Abu Rumaisa, who was from a Hindu family called Siddhartha Dar, he left with his wife and 4 or 5 children last year, and he had links to Waltham Forest as well. Our borough, unfortunately, has had extremist groups operating here for the last 30 years, and is in fact one of the government's high priority areas for funding for counter-terrorism. And I met Lord Carlisle actually at one of those meetings in the borough. So we do have this problem. There are a lot of people here working against extremism and terrorism, lots of good community organizations and mosques doing some very good work. But we clearly are failing with some of these families.
Do you agree with Lord Carlisle that it's the women who are often harder to reach than the men when it comes to creating a counter-narrative to what they're hearing from the extremist groups that they are involved with?
No, I don't agree with that, and I don't think he said that. I think he was saying the focus had been on men in the past. In fact, it's often easier for women to address these kinds of issues without having angry political debates, for example, because they can often focus on children and family issues, especially with young mothers. I think the real problem is that for the first time we've seen large numbers of women getting involved with extremist activity. Up to 10% of Westerners going to join IS are thought to be women. And in many cases, they are single women or divorced women who are estranged from their husbands or partners, and they're recruited online or by contacts with people already in Syria saying, come here, we'll find you a good husband, and you can live in this utopia of a pure Islamic state. So they're sold this dream, especially if they have social problems here, which I fear may be the case in this situation.
So how do we say to them, you're better off with your children in a country where your kids will go to school, they'll grow up in a free country, in a free environment, rather than going to somewhere where they can be recruited to be child soldiers, to be jihadists, and girls, we understand that there is one girl in this family, will be married off at a ridiculously young age?
Well, yes, we have to assert our values. In Britain, I think we have lost that edge, if you like. We take our freedoms and our hard-fought values for granted often. And many people who are born and brought up here, they don't actually appreciate freedom of speech and expression and all these values. And they are taught a hatred of the West, of our own society, by extremist groups. And that has to be challenged. And too often we've been too politically correct and let those extremist groups say that. So what you said is absolutely right. Freedom, often the benefits, child benefit and unemployment benefit, housing benefit, to look after families who don't have any support. All of these are wonderful things for which hundreds of migrants are dying to get into Europe for. And the extremist groups are telling the people who are born and brought up here that no, Britain is an evil and corrupt place, and the best place to live is under IS, because that's some kind of pure Islamic utopia, which clearly it isn't. And people are unfortunately falling for this monstrous but seductive narrative. And I think we as a society have to recognize our strength and assert all the positive and wonderful things about Britain. Of course, there are problems here, but we often moan too much about Britain and fall into the extremist narrative that somehow Britain is a broken country and has all kinds of problems, and that people are better off somewhere else. And I think we have our work cut out to continue making that case.
Thank you very much indeed for talking to us, Dr. Usama Hasan, senior researcher at the counter-extremism think tank, the Quilliam Foundation.